Some pretty incredible developing news coming out in about the past hour today, June 24th, 2025, that is putting major U.S. cities on high alert after what has unfolded with Israel and Iran. As we are hearing, I'm going to share with you the latest headlines that now there are concerns of sleeper cell attacks in the U.S. and nuclear warnings against the United States from Iran. Now, let me share with you the latest news that has come out in about the past hour so you can see what they're saying has now developed. Now, first, take a look. Major U.S. cities on high alert after U.S. strikes on Iran. I'm going to be covering the details for you. And take a look at this. The Kremlin, Russia, has warned that other nations are now ready to give Iran nukes. Dangerous escalation has begun. Now, this came out about 48 hours ago as we had heard that Russia had said, listen, if you're going to destroy their nuclear capabilities, well, we might just give them nuclear warheads so they have the ability to go ahead and develop that technology if they so choose. But coming out just in about the past hour or so today, take a look at this coming out. U.S. strikes did not destroy Iran's nuclear program. Intelligence reports have said the U.S. is now coming out and saying that the strikes that took place on Iran were not as successful as they had originally thought. In fact, they're saying it just set Iran back, but Iran now still has their nuclear facilities, their capabilities to enrich uranium. They could, in a week or so, develop nuclear warheads. Russia is ready to hand them over, and now the United States is on high alert for their attacks on Iran, and there is concerns of Iran retaliation against the United States with nuclear capabilities. So I'm going to share with you the latest video footage that has been coming out now and the articles so you can see what they're saying about major U.S. cities being on high alert, the potential for nuclear attacks, and what this could all mean for the U.S. Now, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Are you concerned about sleeper cells in the United States? We've been hearing the warnings, nuclear attacks and detonations against U.S. cities. If you're concerned, drop a yes. If you think no, it's not going to go that route and that these warnings are empty, put a no. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Yes, you're concerned. No, you're not. Also, do me a favor, if you appreciate the updates, giving you the latest breaking news, and this update on the nuclear facilities coming out just in the past couple of hours, the information that Russia is ready to hand over nuclear weapons coming out in just the past roughly 24, 48 hours, do me a favor, take a second, hit that like button if you appreciate the breaking news updates. Now, in addition to that, also, if this is your first time here and you want to stay up to date, it's totally free. Why not? Go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Turn on that notification bell here on the channel. I'll keep you up to date, totally free. I cite all of the sources, put the articles on the screen, read right from them, show you the video footage, hyperlink it like a book report with sources, dates, so you can see it for yourself. Try to hold myself to the highest level of accountability here on the channel to my audience so you can know and rest assured that this is the latest information. So let's go ahead though and dive right in, get you caught up so that way you know exactly what's going on. Let's go ahead and start off with what we're hearing is Russia saying that they will provide nuclear warheads to Iran, hinting, suggesting that they could go this route. And then we're going to be talking about how Iran actually has just been set back, but has not lost their nuclear capabilities. And also, we're still waiting to see, is this ceasefire going to hold between Israel and Iran? As we are hearing that the ceasefire was violated, Trump is saying it's back on. Do you think it's going to hold? Do you trust the ceasefire? Let me know. Again, put yes or no in the comments. Let me know your thoughts. Hit that like button, and let's take a look at some video footage to get you caught up on the latest coming out.
A lot of people who we don't have full accounting of were let in over the last 4 years under the Biden administration. We know that some of those people were on terrorism watch lists, and this is one of the reasons why border security is national security, is if you let a bunch of crazy people into your country, those crazy people can eventually take action. We're going to do everything that we can to make sure that doesn't happen and to keep Americans safe.
There you go. The vice president yesterday on Meet the Press. The White House warning about dangers of sleeper cells lurking here in the U.S. Why would they think that? Well, for the last 4 years of Joe Biden's policies, we've let in over 1,500 Iranian nationals. This is from the Border Patrol. Bill Maloogian got this last night. And guess what? Over 700 were allowed to stay. Senate Intel Committee Chair Tom Cotton knows all about it. Senator, when you talk about reprisals, people think about sleeper cells here. Do they have a right to be concerned?
Good morning, Brian. Unfortunately, they do have a right to be concerned. As you said, Joe Biden had a wide open border policy for 4 years. We know that terrorists tried to enter our country. Iran has a long history of terrorizing America going back 46 years, to include here in the United States. They tried to assassinate Donald Trump last year. Someone finally answered the call to Iran's fatwa against Salman Rushdie a few years back and brutally stabbed him. But I think it's important that we remember Iran did not become a terrorist state because Donald Trump bombed their nuclear bunkers. He bombed their nuclear bunkers because they're a terrorist state. And we cannot allow a terror state to have nuclear weapons.
Yes, and let them try to assassinate our president and Mike Pompeo and Brian Hook and John Bolton. Why was that allowed to stand? I don't get it. But just to break down a little bit more, some more stats on the border and why people are concerned about the people that have crossed. In 2021, 48 came across, then 197, then 462, and then the last year of Joe Biden, 797. So that's the IED in human beings that the Biden administration left behind. Just moving ahead and talking about what's going to happen next. The foreign minister of Iran is going to Russia today. And ahead of that meeting, the former president of Russia, Dmitry Medvedev, says this: the enrichment of nuclear material, and now we can say it outright, the future production of nuclear weapons will continue. A number of countries are ready to directly supply Iran with their own nuclear warheads. That is just off the charts crazy. But how do you view it?
Well, one, he doesn't have real influence inside of Russia. Vladimir Putin does. He was Vladimir Putin's puppet for 4 years when he was president during the Obama era. And two, I think you see that kind of bluster and rhetoric because Iran is providing no real support, or I'm sorry, Russia is providing no real support to Iran. For the second time in just 8 months, one of Iran's main clients in the Middle East has faced dire straits, and Russia has stood by. The first was last fall when Bashar al-Assad's tyranny fell in Syria. What did Russia do? It simply gave Assad a one-way trip to Moscow. Now, Donald Trump, after 25 years of presidents promising that Iran can't have a nuclear weapon, has finally acted on it and destroyed their key nuclear facilities and infrastructure. And what has Russia done? Issued a strongly worded statement and welcomed Iran's foreign minister to Moscow. So I think this is mostly just bluster to cover up the fact that Russia is a pretty fickle friend to have in the world.
Senator, people like to label people like you war hawks or neocons. Lindsey Graham, war. Are you a war hawk or a neocon?
No, Brian, I'm someone who puts America's interests first, just like Donald Trump. And for 10 years, like Donald Trump, I have said that Iran can never have a nuclear weapon. Iran has been terrorizing the United States and the civilized world since 1979. They have the blood of thousands of Americans on their hands. As President Trump has said repeatedly, so have I said, Iran can never be allowed to have a nuclear weapon. That means Iran cannot have any path to nuclear weapons either.
And it's personal to you. You're in the infantry. In Iraq, we've lost 600 plus guys. It's more like over 1,000, according to former Secretary of Defense Austin. And it's directly linked to Iran. And they've never been forced to pay for that. Maybe the payback begins. And I don't think that's being a war hawk. I think it's defending America. Senator Tom Cotton, thanks so much.
Wow. So the warnings of sleeper cells in the United States putting cities on high alert. And we are hearing that Russia and other nations ready to hand over nuclear warheads, and this coming as we've received the breaking news over the past hour or so that the U.S. strikes did not destroy Iran's nuclear program capabilities, and now there is the concern of retaliation against the United States for those bunker buster bombs that hit Iran. Let me know your thoughts. Iran doing a ceasefire. Do you believe it? Or do you think that Iran is just stalling for time now, maybe getting nuclear warheads from Russia, building up their nuclear enrichment facilities again, getting things on track to strike against the United States? And we're also hearing, as I mentioned, the warnings of retaliation. Iran saying the United States will pay for this. We will see. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. But let's take a look at some of these articles so that way you can see it for yourself. Now, the Kremlin warns that other nations are ready to give Iran nukes. Dangerous escalation has begun. Now, this article says Moscow warned Sunday that several nations are prepared to supply Tehran with nuclear weapons as Russia and China condemned America's attacks on Iran's nuclear facilities. And this is one of the major concerns, not necessarily specifically just Iran, but Iran partnered with Russia, Iran partnered with China, and our adversaries unifying against the United States. Let me know your thoughts. Is this a concern for you? Are you concerned about our adversaries, Russia, China, Iran, North Korea, unifying against the United States? Dmitry Medvedev, who serves as deputy head of Russia's President Vladimir Putin's Security Council, claimed Saturday's U.S. airstrikes, the first to use 15-ton GBU-57 bunker buster bombs in combat, only caused minimal damage to Tehran's nuclear sites, including the fortified Fordo enrichment plant. Medvedev, who did not specify which countries are ready to arm Tehran, reiterated that the attacks would not stop Russia's ally in the Middle East from acquiring nuclear weapons. So the nuclear warning's coming out, saying that Iran will have nuclear weapons. Now, reading on, the article says, the statement comes as Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said that he will be traveling to Moscow to meet with Putin to discuss countermeasures. We enjoy a strategic partnership, and we always consult with each other and coordinate our positions, Araghchi told the Russian media. Now, Russia's foreign ministry described the American airstrike in Iran as a gross violation of international law, the UN Charter, the UN Security Council resolution. It is already clear that a dangerous escalation has begun, fraught with further undermining of regional and global security, the ministry said in a statement. Beijing echoed the accusations that the U.S. has violated international law by carrying out these airstrikes, with China's foreign ministry warning that the attack will have a ripple effect across the Middle East. But Chinese officials also said their country is committed to keep the fighting from escalating, with Beijing calling for a ceasefire. China is willing to work with the international community to pool efforts together to uphold justice and to contribute to the work for restoring peace and stability in the Middle East, the ministry said in a statement. China is being pressured by the U.S. to stop Iran from closing the Strait of Hormuz, a key oil shipping route, the closure of which would impact global prices. Secretary of State Marco Rubio on Sunday called on Beijing to make sure that Iran keeps the oil lane open, noting that the bulk of China's oil comes from that strait. It will have some impact on us, Rubio told CBS News Face the Nation, of a possible closure of the Strait of Hormuz. It will have a lot more impact on the rest of the world, he added, calling the move economic suicide for Iran. So there you have it. Let me know your thoughts. Russia saying we might just hand over nuclear warheads to Iran since they are being hit by the United States. Now, also, we're hearing that Iran actually, as I mentioned, the breaking news coming out, did not get their nuclear facilities completely wiped out like we had originally heard. We had heard that this was a very successful bunker buster attack by the United States. Now we're hearing intel coming out saying, no, that is actually not the case. That it did not hit and impact the way that they had thought and they had hoped. Let's take a look at the breaking news coming out in just the past hour so that way you can see it for yourself.
Welcome back in here to Live Now from Fox. I am Andy Mack. We're learning more about the success of the U.S. airstrikes on those 3 Iranian nuclear sites on Saturday. And I want to put this up here on Live Now from Fox from Meg Kennard, the Associated Press, saying early U.S. intelligence reports suggest the U.S. strikes only set back Iran's nuclear program by a few months. This, according to the Associated Press. And we're also hearing from different members of the Trump administration about some of this. You can see from Aisha Hasni, Fox News reporter, saying the Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth responding to it, saying, quote, based on everything we have seen, and I've seen it all, our bombing campaign obliterated Iran's ability to create nuclear weapons. Our massive bombs hit exactly the right spot at each target and work perfectly. The impact of those bombs is buried under a mountain of rubble in Iran. So anyone who says the bombs were not devastating stating is just trying to undermine the president and the successful mission. Also, comments from Caroline Leavitt, the White House press secretary, denying reports that the Iran nuclear facilities are intact. So, of course, we'll follow this here on Live Now from Fox and hear from more experts throughout the day and the week.
There you have it, guys. Now, also, we've got some more coming out. Let's take a look at this one coming out from ABC News, so that way you can see it for yourself.
Israel and Iran violating a ceasefire just hours after it went into effect. The president slamming both nations for not following the deal that he helped broker after days of strikes and fighting in the region. Trump using some strong language earlier, telling our Rachel Scott he's not happy with either side.
I'm not happy with Israel. You know, when I say, okay, now you have 12 hours, you don't go out in the first hour and just drop everything you have on them. So I'm not happy with them. I'm not happy with Iran either. You know what? We basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the they're doing.
Well, hours after Trump announced that so-called 12-day war would soon be over, there were reports of explosions coming in. Both Israel and Iran blaming each other for breaking this agreement. Israel claiming it only responded to a barrage of missiles launched by Tehran before the ceasefire went into effect. But Iran's state-run media is denying any violation, saying that the country's president won't violate the ceasefire unless Israel does. Israel's defense minister echoing that same sentiment earlier today. Of course, all of this coming, though, after yesterday's Iranian missile attack on a U.S. airbase in Qatar, just 2 days after the U.S. struck 3 nuclear sites in Iran. Now, Trump had touted monumental damage done to all nuclear sites in Iran. But sources are now telling ABC News that early intelligence finds the U.S. strikes perhaps only set Iran's nuclear program back by months. So I want to bring in ABC News foreign correspondent Marcus Moore. He's in Tel Aviv. Our ABC News senior White House correspondent Selena Wang is traveling with the president in the Netherlands, and ABC News senior Pentagon reporter Louis Martinez. Look, this is a lot to get to. So, Louis, what are you hearing about this early intelligence assessment here on exactly how much damage they think was done to this nuclear site in Iran?
Kana, this initial assessment, which was produced by U.S. Central Command and by the Defense Intelligence Agency, says that the initial assessment is that while there was significant damage to the 3 nuclear facilities that were targeted by the United States over the weekend, it only set back the nuclear program by several months, and that Iran's enriched uranium, what they had already produced prior to those attacks this weekend, remains untouched and was not destroyed, and that the centrifuges that produce are used to enrich uranium are also largely intact. So these findings, obviously at odds with the comments that we've heard from President Trump and from Defense Secretary Hegseth, who both said that Iran's nuclear program was obliterated. And we got comment, we reached the Pentagon for comment. We received a statement provided to us on behalf of Pete Hegseth, which said that based on everything we've seen, and quote, "I've seen it all, our bombing campaign obliterated Iran's ability to create nuclear weapons." So he is standing by that assessment that he made publicly over the weekend. But now we're seeing that the initial intelligence assessment, at least, is proving to be at odds with his characterization.
Wow. So, Selena, as you heard Louis say, SecDef standing by his statement. What are we hearing from the White House?
Yeah, well, first of all, this is in stark contrast to what we've heard from the president and the White House, saying that Iran's nuclear program has been, quote, obliterated. But today, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt, in response to our reporting and from CNN, she is blasting it, saying that this is a result of, quote, low-level loser leakers. And let me just read to you part of her statement. She says, quote, "This assessment and the leak is a clear attempt to demean President Trump and discredit the brave fighter pilots who conducted a perfectly executed mission to obliterate Iran's nuclear program. Everyone knows what happens when you drop 14 30,000-pound bombs perfectly on their targets. Total obliteration." But again, at least according to this initial report, and the caveat here is that this can change as more intelligence assessments come out, which was highly classified. This report says that the U.S. believes, based on this early report, that significant damage was done, but that was mostly to the above ground structures, not to the ones deep underground. And according to one person, the enriched uranium was not destroyed and the centrifuges are largely intact. So there have been questions ever since the U.S. strikes about just just how severe the damage was. Was Iran able to move some of that enriched uranium and those centrifuges out of those sites, knowing that those U.S. attacks were coming? And also the bigger question of, did these U.S. strikes actually convince Iran to drop their nuclear ambitions, or did it in fact give them further reason to continue to pursue their nuclear ambitions moving into the future?
Yeah, adding fuel to the fire there, so to speak. And in the meantime, Marcus, we're talking about this ceasefire. What do we know about the ceasefire out right now? And is this something that Israel wanted in the first place?
Kana, the ceasefire is still holding, albeit fragile. It is still in place. In the lead up to the phased start to this ceasefire, there were heavy airstrikes on both sides. In fact, the air raid siren sounded numerous times today here in Tel Aviv and across Israel. But since the ceasefire went into place, there have been no reports of any other airstrikes by either side. And that is encouraging news to so many across the region. In terms of what Israel wanted, there's every indication that the IDF, the Israeli government, wanted to move forward with hitting a number of other targets in Iran. But there's some indication that in terms of the public here, people, everyday people, they are glad this is over, Kana. And certainly with the restrictions being lifted, people are able to go back to their regular lives. That is something that they were hoping to do in the midst of really an uncertain time and a very stressful time for people, not only here in Israel, of course, but across the Middle East.
Absolutely, incredibly tense. And so, Louis, how's the Pentagon responding to this ceasefire? The president saying it's been violated. But also, as he's saying that, what's the plan here for the United States? Is it to remain in a defensive posture in the region, especially if there's more strikes?
No, that's exactly right, Kana. The United States is maintaining that defensive posture throughout the region for its U.S. military personnel and facilities. We saw overnight that there were some drones that were launched towards some U.S. and Iraqi bases inside of Iraq, but they didn't cause any damage, and almost all of them were knocked down by defensive measures, and no one has taken claim for or responsibility for those attacks. But it kind of goes to the whole notion here that you have all these U.S. forces in the region who are on a level of high alert in case something does happen. We saw it happen yesterday when Iran launched those more than a dozen missiles towards that U.S. air base in Qatar. And I think the posture here is going to remain defensive and also to be a deterrent in case this conflict continues. But they're looking carefully to see how this ceasefire holds, and in the meantime, they're maintaining that defensive posture.
And so as they do that, Selena, you're again with the president at this NATO summit here. It sounds like he also spoke with Netanyahu as well earlier. Do we have a readout of that? What more is the president saying?
Yeah, so we've learned from sources that the president was exceptionally firm with Netanyahu about what it's going to take to have this ceasefire sustained into the future. The source also tells us that Netanyahu basically got the message. He understands the severity of the situation and the concerns from President Trump. But the sources did not tell us that Israel had committed to holding back and stopping their attacks on Iran. So clearly some strain here in this relationship. President Trump making his fury at Israel very, very clear this morning, saying that these two countries have been fighting so hard for so long that they don't know what the bleep they're doing. And as the president lands here in NATO, he's beginning his meetings with NATO leaders. This is certainly going to loom large over the summit. Remember, the European leaders, some of them had met with Iran's foreign minister before the U.S. strikes began, urging Iran to come back to the negotiating table to meet with the U.S., urging for de-escalation and diplomacy.
Wow. So conflicting reports. Let me know your thoughts. Who is telling the truth? What has unfolded here as we're hearing that the United States came out and said that they bombed those 3 nuclear facilities in Iran and they have completely destroyed them. They're rubble. We actually heard Donald Trump say this today, that Iran will not have their nuclear facilities up and running. Yet we are seeing articles coming out like this now saying that it is being reported that the U.S. strikes did not destroy Iran's nuclear program. What do you think happened here? Did Donald Trump say that there was a strike that destroyed everything, and maybe he jumped the gun without the information coming out? Or did we strike, we wiped everything out, and now these reports coming out are false? Like we heard some people say that, no, those nuclear facilities are totally wiped out. People are trying to undermine the Trump administration with false information. Let me know your thoughts. Have the nuclear facilities of Iran been totally wiped out? If you think they have, put true. If you think they have not been, put false. Is Trump's statements true? If true, put true. If you think false, put false. Drop them in the comments. Let me know your thoughts. But we're starting to see reports coming out like this. So let's go ahead and take a look. And this is the breaking news that has come out in the past hour. And as I mentioned, the concerns that follow this are the fact that we are hearing that other nations are also going to be contributing, they're saying, to potentially giving Iran more nuclear weapons. So Iran, their nuclear facilities are intact. In a week or so, they could have a nuclear warhead. Russia coming out and saying that countries are going to be lining up to give nuclear warheads to Iran, so they're ready to attack. And right now, that is why major U.S. cities are on high alert from strikes from Iran. And I'm going to be reading that for you here in just a second. But let's go ahead and take a look at this article. This is the breaking news coming out in about the past hour. This article coming out from BBC News, and it is hyperlinked in the description. As you know, I cite all the sources. And if you appreciate that, take a second, hit that like button for me. And I'm seeing trues and falses in the comments. Some people believe it's true that the nuclear facilities were wiped out. Some people are saying false, that they have not been wiped out, that Trump might have jumped the gun on that report, and that they believe this report coming out. Let's take a look so you can see it for yourself. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. U.S. strikes on Iran's nuclear facility did not destroy the Iranian nuclear program and have probably only set them back by months, according to an intelligence evaluation. Details of the initial damage assessment from the Pentagon's defense intelligence agencies were leaked to the BBC's U.S. partners, CBS, and other media. So this has been leaked out by the Pentagon, they're saying. So this is not foreign news outlet. Iran had come out and said they didn't hit us as hard as they're claiming. Now the Pentagon is saying this is what has unfolded. The White House says the assessment is flat out wrong and is a clear attempt to demean President Donald Trump. Man, let me know your thoughts. Our own Pentagon is saying it didn't happen. Trump is saying we did wipe them out and that they are demeaning us. Meanwhile, a ceasefire appears to have taken hold between Israel and Iran, with both nations acknowledging it is currently in place. Israel's prime minister hails a historic victory for his country in an address to the nation, while Iran's president says his people had determined the end of the 12-day war. So, man, let me know your thoughts. Now, how volatile 24-hour edged Iran and Israel to a ceasefire. Trump thanks Jeb Bush. This is the live feed coming out here. American support for U.S. strikes on Iran split along partisan lines. So we are now hearing the latest news coming out that the strikes did not destroy Iran's nuclear program as we had initially thought. So let me know your thoughts in the comments. Now, in addition to that, let's take a look at this article right here. As we have been hearing the warnings over the past couple days of the sleeper cells here inside the United States, and now the concern is, in addition to that, Iran talking about retaliation against the United States now potentially could be given nuclear warheads by Russia, and also just set back in their efforts to develop them themselves. NYPD increases patrol at religious cultural sites amid threat concerns. Expert warns Iran capable of cyber attacks on U.S. infrastructures. Officials fear terrorist calls may already be active inside of the United States. And also, if you missed previous videos I've covered for you, the sleeper cell lists that we've received from the FBI. I've gone through the lists extensively, letting you know where they're at, what the FBI has had to say. I even put together a map for you. And in addition to that, I did another video as well where we covered major cities and what it would look like if a nuclear bomb were detonated in major U.S. cities, the extent of the blasts, the impacts, the radius. A lot of reports coming out on that as well. I covered the details for you. But let's take a look at this report coming out. Now, these have been coming out quite a bit just recently. You can see this one just coming out yesterday, June 23rd, 2025. So this is more recent. We've heard the warnings of sleeper cells being in the United States for years. Now, they are putting U.S. cities on high alert right now, sounding the alarm of these potentially being activated. And the sleeper cells are those Iranian nationalists that have made their way illegally through our borders into the United States, sitting in various cities, waiting for the signal to go ahead and activate attacks on U.S. infrastructure systems, physical attacks, There's concerns about potential bombs taking place in major cities and doing this simultaneously to wreak havoc all across the U.S., not on military sites or on political sites, but in U.S. citizens' cities, disrupting the lives of everyday Americans. Let's go ahead and take a look at this article so you can see it for yourself. Major cities across the United States are on heightened security alert following Saturday night's airstrikes targeting nuclear facilities in Iran, with law enforcement agencies around the country deploying additional forces to protect potential targets from retaliatory attacks. Now, the New York Police Department, the nation's largest municipal police force, issued security advisories and increased patrols around religious, cultural, and diplomatic sites Saturday night. The department coordinated with federal partners while monitoring for potential threats to the city. Now, out of an abundance of caution, we're deploying additional resources to religious, cultural, and diplomatic sites across New York City and coordinating with our federal partners. We'll continue to monitor for any potential impact to New York City, the NYPD stated on social media. Now, U.S. President Donald Trump said on social media earlier Monday evening that Israel and Iran have agreed to a complete and total ceasefire to be phased in over 24 hours. Law enforcement officials expressed particular concern about soft targets, including churches, synagogues, and tourist attractions that could be vulnerable to attacks. Police departments in smaller cities across the country also increased security measures, citing concerns about potential threats during summer events and parades. So again, if you're going to be in large crowds at events outdoors, please use caution. Be vigilant of your surroundings. News Nation has obtained a memo from Customs and Border Protection Commissioner Rodney Scott warning that thousands of Iranian nationalists have been documented entering the United States illegally, and countless more were likely among the known and unknown gotaways. At the same time, the Department of Homeland Security has issued a bulletin warning of a heightened threat environment. A source close to the White House tells News Nation officials are actively monitoring the situation, which has major U.S. cities across the United States on edge. Now, national security experts warned that Iran's cyber capabilities pose a significant threat to the United States infrastructure as well. Former CIA spy and News Nation's national security contributor Tracy Walder said Iran has previously launched successful cyber attacks against major American banks, including Bank of America and JP Morgan Chase. Iran is pretty cyber capable, to be completely honest, Walder said. They have launched denial of service attacks successfully here in the United States. Now, in addition to that, she also raised concerns about potential terrorist cells that are already operating within the United States. Walder pointed to previous prosecutions of individuals connected to Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps who were active on U.S. soil. Now, the Department of Homeland Security pledged to work with local authorities to protect American cities, with officials suggesting federal assistance may be necessary for smaller police departments lacking adequate resources. Air Force Base that sent strikes takes extra caution. The Air Force Base in Missouri, from which the pilots left to complete the strikes on Iran, is also trying to ensure the safety of residents and military members. Noster Mayor Garrett Carter said that the city is taking extra security precautions after that bombing, but wouldn't go into detail. He said that if the city were to be targeted, he believes the Air Force Base would be the primary target. At this time, I don't see any reason for fear, said Carter. I feel like we're situated well enough in the continental U.S. that we're fairly safe. Carter added that no known threats have been brought to their attention as of yet. So there you have it, you guys. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. As we're hearing, there are major concerns, high alert of Iranian retaliation, sleeper cells, potential infrastructure going down. That would be water systems, our communications, transportation, electrical grids going down, various things that could get hit. In addition to that, potential physical attacks, smaller attacks on churches, political areas. Also, the concerns of dirty bombs or suitcase nukes being carried over across the southern borders, and now the concerns of Iran actually getting nuclear warheads. A lot of people I saw in the comments saying, I thought Iran did not have nuclear warheads. Well, we're hearing that we thought we had wiped out completely their ability to do so. Now reports coming out in just the past hour today, maybe the past 2 hours now, June 24th, 2025, saying that reports are coming in from the Pentagon that we did not wipe out entirely their facilities. We just set them back, but they are just right there ready to develop these. And now other nations like Russia saying, in fact, we will just give them nuclear bombs so they can use them if they'd like. So a lot of concern right now, especially with Iran, saying that there will be retaliation against the United States. Now, let's take a look at some more video footage that has just come out today to give you more updates on the concerns and the alerts coming out right now.
I didn't like the fact that Israel unloaded right after we made the deal. They didn't have to unload. And I didn't like the fact that the retaliation was very strong. But in all fairness, Israel unloaded a lot. And now I hear Israel just went out because they felt it was violated by one rocket that didn't land anywhere. That's not what we want, I'll tell you. And I'm telling you, I'm not happy about that, Israel, either. I think they both violated it. I'm not sure they did it intentionally. They couldn't rein people back. I don't like the fact that Israel went out this morning at all.
There's President Trump on his way to NATO just in the last hour before leaving Washington for the NATO summit. He said both Israel and Iran violated the ceasefire that he brokered yesterday. The president had a busy morning on Truth Social, posting this: Israel is not going to attack Iran. All planes will turn around and head home, while doing a friendly plane wave to Iran. Nobody will be hurt. The ceasefire is in effect. The president brokering ceasefire and peace in the Middle East yesterday. Joining me now is Texas Senator Ted Cruz, a member of the Senate Foreign Relations and Judiciary Committees. Senator, it's great to see you again. Thanks so much for being here this morning. Assess the president's leadership on all of this and what has taken place. How do you see things?
Well, I think President Trump's leadership has been extraordinary. It has been clear-eyed. He has stood unshakably alongside our friend and ally, the state of Israel, and he acted decisively this weekend to take out Iran's nuclear capability. The military attack that our soldiers carried out was incredibly effective. We had 7 B-2 stealth bombers that dropped a total of 14 bunker buster bombs on 3 nuclear facilities, annihilated those nuclear facilities and made it home safely with no casualties whatsoever. That was clear. That was decisive. And Maria, understand the reason the president ordered that attack was, yes, to stand with Israel, but more fundamentally to protect America. The Ayatollah, when he chants death to America and death to Israel, he means it. The Ayatollah refers to Israel as the little Satan. He refers to America as the great Satan. And there's a reason the Ayatollah has been developing an ICBM program. ICBM, as you know, stands for Intercontinental Ballistic Missile. You don't need an ICBM for Iran to attack Israel. They're relatively close. The purpose of an ICBM, the reason the Ayatollah wants an ICBM, is to be able to detonate a nuclear warhead over an American city and potentially kill millions of Americans. That's why President Trump acted decisively, and I'm proud to stand with the president.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we were afraid of retaliation from Iran, and we were talking about what Iran is capable of at this point. And when I spoke with the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, on Sunday, he had a message for China should Iran make a move. Watch this. Do you expect Iran to move to close the Strait of Hormuz to try to disrupt oil transportation across the world?
Well, I encourage the Chinese government in Beijing to call them about that, because they heavily depend on the Straits of Hormuz for their oil. If they do that, it'll be another terrible mistake. It's economic suicide for them if they do it. And we retain options to deal with that. But other countries should be looking at that as well. It would hurt other countries' economies a lot worse than ours. It would be, I think, a massive escalation that would merit a response, not just by us, but from others. We had 3 objectives. We struck those 3 objectives with decisive force. And that was the point of this mission, and that's what we achieved. What happens next will depend on what they do. They want to negotiate, we're ready to negotiate. They want to get cute and do things that are dangerous, we have responses available that are devastating.
So, Senator, what do you want to see happen now? I mean, it seems to me that if, in fact, you and your colleagues and President Trump are able to put the Iranian threat at bay, perhaps the president now can turn attention to focusing on the larger adversary, I think, or equal adversary, and that is communist China. Tell us how you see foreign policy from here.
Yeah, Maria, both are very serious challenges. The most acute short-term national security risk America faced was the risk of a nuclear Iran, because you have a theocratic lunatic leading that country who was actively trying to develop nuclear weapons, who was close to developing nuclear weapons, and had repeatedly stated his intention to use those weapons and to try to murder as many Americans as possible. That's what President Trump acted decisively this weekend to eliminate that threat. In terms of long-term threats, the biggest geopolitical threat the United States faces over the next century is, as you said, communist China. And I got to tell you, when I arrived in the Senate 13 years ago, I was saying 13 years ago, China is our greatest adversary, our greatest threat over the next 100 years. And at the time, that was a very lonely view in the United States Senate. Every Democrat disagreed with me, and most of the Republicans disagreed with me. They just looked at China, and they saw nothing but dollar signs as far as the eye can see. I think many more people, their eyes have opened up to the threat of China, and I think we need to have the same sort of comprehensive, serious strategy to counteract and defeat China that we had under Ronald Reagan for the Soviet Union, that won the Cold War, defeated the Soviet Union, and won the Cold War without a shot. And in both instances, let's be clear, in Iran and with China, nobody wants a shooting war where America and China, where our armies are shooting at each other. Just same with Iran. Nobody wants America to invade Iran. That's not what President Trump did. He did a limited targeted bombing strike. But there are lots of tools we can use to counteract China, just like we did with the Soviet Union, short of military conflict. And I believe President Trump is clear-eyed about taking on China, as he should be.
And you've assessed this in a very practical way. I don't understand why your colleagues on the left do not see this. I mean, we're talking about elected officials who have been screaming Russia, Russia, Russia while China was eating our lunch. Now a group of 12 House Democrats, who are also, by the way, military veterans, they're supporting a War Powers Act, which would constrain President Trump's military authority. In the middle of this incredible conflict, they want to constrain the president of the free world in response to Operation Midnight Hammer, when the U.S. took out those 3 nuclear sites. You've got Democrats Jim Himes, Gregory Meeks, Adam Smith introducing a war powers resolution to stop U.S. armed forces from hitting Iran, Senator. What are you going to do about it, and how do you see this playing out?
Well, listen, it's going to fail. It's going to be voted down. But I got to say, today's Democrat Party, it's really sad that they don't stand for any policies, any reasonable positions. They're now a party of anger and hate. The number one hate they have is they hate Donald Trump. It is the animating position of Democrats today is hatred of Donald J. Trump. Next, they hate Israel, and the anti-Israel sentiment, the pro-Hamas sentiment in the Democrat Party keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So when Israel is in the midst of war, the Democrats' instinct is, how can we undermine and weaken Israel? And far too many of them, I'm very sorry to say, I believe hate America. That the same people who are funding Democrats are the people who are funding anti-Semitic protests on college campuses. They're people who are funding riots in Los Angeles and other cities in favor of open borders and allowing more murderers and rapists and Venezuelan gang members into America. And that is an agenda that makes no sense. So the Democrats, they'll have their vote. It'll be voted down, and you can count on, if we need elected leaders to stand up to our enemies, to stand with our friends, to protect Americans. Sadly, the Democrats are telling the American people they're not those leaders, and they're going to be on the wrong side of every one of those issues.
That is a sad situation. And by the way, one more reason why you don't have any Democrat support for President Trump's agenda. You have returned to Washington. Your colleagues are back as the clock is ticking down on this July 4th deadline to pass the big, beautiful bill. Tell me where it stands. I know Ron Johnson is very worried about debt and deficits. You've got others like Rand Paul worried about raising the debt ceiling. Will you get this over the finish line, and where are the cuts coming? What will this look like at the end of the Senate briefing?
So listen, we're going to get it done, and the reason we're going to get it done, Maria, is we have to, because it is the principal vehicle through which we can accomplish the president's agenda, through which we can deliver on the mandate that came on Election Day. The American people reelected President Trump, gave us a Republican Senate, a Republican House. Now we've got to deliver. There are a lot of good things in this bill. This bill rebuilds our military. This bill secures the border, funds building the wall, funds more Border Patrol agents, more ICE agents. This bill also cuts taxes on working men and women. It includes, among other things, my legislation on no tax on tips, a terrific policy the president campaigned on. I wrote the law. That's in this bill. This will be the biggest tax cut of a generation, and I hope we see significant spending cuts. We're in the middle of those debates right now. I am with my colleagues who are fighting for more spending cuts. I think we ought to show real fiscal discipline.
Yeah.
But where exactly we land, we'll find out this week. But one way or another, we're going to get it done, because failure is not an option. We got to deliver on our promises.
We've got to.
There you have it, you guys. Now, he said failure is not an option. We've got to deliver on our promises. He's talking about that big, beautiful bill, and we're hoping to see that come through, as well as we're waiting for the resolution to the conflict right now in the Middle East. Now, in addition to that, I wanted to share with you guys, I see that people are asking about the lists. Now, let me go ahead and share with you some of this. I actually got these lists from FBI reporting well over a year ago. I think it was maybe into the end part of 2023. So let me go ahead and share with you, because there was a couple of videos. I see you, Epic Rain. Thank you for the super chats. Appreciate that a ton. Let me get you some clarity on this. In fact, there's video footage covering it. Let me pull this up for you really quick here. So you can see here, if you go to my video section in popular, this second video here, FBI warns of attacks on U.S. soil. I don't think that the list is on that one. I think it's on this one over here. Cities on the list. I think I go through the FBI list right here in the video section, and I think I actually play for you the clip from the FBI where they list it out. Now, if it's not that one, there was a couple of them where I actually covered the list in detail for you. So it also, if you go to live streams and you look at my most popular as well, and you can see we're actually live right now. Here's cities on the list as well. And then the nuke list, where we go through all the cities that recently had the warning 6 months ago of what would happen if a blast or a detonation took place. So I covered the lists for you in detail, and cite the sources. This list came out from the FBI. I got it in 2023, and it's the video footage clip of them actually saying these are the cities on the list. Now, I don't have the list in front of me right now, so I see people are asking me to read the list. I don't have it in front of me. I don't remember. It's an extensive list. I do remember that Houston, Texas is on the list. I do know that the state of New York, they said that there are so many sleeper cells and concerns that the entire state is just on alert, that the FBI is aware that there are sleeper cells, there are Iranian nationalists that have entered the state of New York to the point where it's just high alert. Washington, D.C. is on the list. I believe tons of cities in California, in Florida, in Texas are on the list. And if you go through those videos, I go through the lists for you, so you can go ahead and check them out. Let's see here. And so thank you for that. Yeah, go ahead and check them out. On there, you'll see the video footage. Somebody's asking for that. Yeah, go on to those videos. I've got them cited for you. But I will continue to keep you up to date on everything. Lanita is saying, thank you for the report, Steve. You are very welcome. God is Love is asking, is Montana on the list? I don't remember if Montana is on the list. There are a ton of cities. Be sure to go through those videos and you can see them for yourself. Also, video footage on it as well. However, we are getting these warnings that have been coming out with the breaking news lately on this. As you can see here, the warnings coming out again just in the past 24 hours, and articles coming out on this. Major U.S. cities on high alert after the U.S. strikes Iran. And we have gotten these lists. I shared them with you. NYPD, New York is a major one of concern. And also, you can see here, Kremlin warns that other nations ready to give Iran nukes. So now there is the nuclear concern, in addition to the cyber attacks, the physical attacks. And we've just heard in the past couple of hours that the U.S. strikes did not destroy Iran's nuclear program. But we're getting conflicting information on that. Now, once we get some clarity, once it is said Whether or not these nuclear facilities have been completely destroyed, I will let you know here on the channel. However, let me know your thoughts. We're also hearing the fact that other nations are saying we might just give Iran nuclear warheads so that way they have the ability to use them. And that is Russia that is saying that. Let me know your thoughts. Are you concerned? If you're concerned, put yes. If you're not, put no. But we're hearing that Iran is vowing retaliation. But do they really want to go down the path of all-out war with the United States? They do have the sleeper cells right here, right now, in various cities. We're hearing the warnings from the FBI, and that is why we're hearing the cities are on high alert. Now, as more information comes out, though, I'll be sure to share here on the channel so you know exactly what is going on. I'll be sure to cite the sources, put it on the screen, read right from it so you know it is the latest. And if you appreciate that, do me a favor. If you haven't done so yet, I see we've got well over 4,000 people on the live stream. Take a second, hit that like button for me. Helps spread this out further so more people can get the latest updates. Subscribe to stay up to date. It's totally free. Why not? I'll be sure to keep you up to speed on everything. And like I said, I'll have things hyperlinked, put it on the screen, play the video footage for you so you can see the dates, the sources, and know that this is the latest information. But yes, I see people putting yes in the comments. I also saw all the birthday wishes. Thank you for that. Appreciate that a ton. It's not my birthday, but I do appreciate that. And if you appreciate the channel, hit that like button. But thank you guys so much for joining me. I will keep you up to date on everything. There's been a lot of news lately, so I've been doing multiple videos. And as more information comes out, I'll be sure to share so that way you know the latest. But that is it. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll catch you in the next one. Take care. God bless. This is Steve.